Hello, I'm Soutphommasane, the Race Discrimination Commissioner at the Australian Human Rights Commission. I'm delighted to send you this message to the Dirrum Dirrum conference. I'm sorry I'm not able to be there with you this weekend in Canberra, but I did want to take this opportunity to pass on my good wishes and to congratulate the organisers of the conference for bringing together so many delegates from around the country to deliberate and reflect on issues which are facing Australia. I wanted to pay special tribute to Dominic Ngunnawal, who's been organising this conference. I had the opportunity to meet Dominic very briefly in Canberra a few weeks ago and was very impressed by the question that he put to me at the National Press Club. And Dominic's asked me to say a few words about racism and racial discrimination and how all of us can respond to this issue. It may seem strange, but racism still exists today, even though we're a multicultural society. When you think of modern Australia, you're thinking of a country where 28% of people were born overseas, an additional 20% have a parent who was born overseas. And to think that this is really the result of only a few decades of immigration. Prior to the end of the Second World War, Australia was very much a monocultural and homogenous place, but in the decades since the end of the Second World War, we've had millions of migrants arrive to this country, and we've done that very well. We've achieved social cohesion and cultural harmony despite the fact that so many millions have arrived here. And that's very rare in the world. Very few countries can boast that they've managed to conduct such ambitious programs of immigration, but have done it in a nation-building way, and do it with integration rather than with division. Key to this is the policies that government have adopted in dealing with migration and multiculturalism. The very policy of multiculturalism has been key to the success of our migration story. What multiculturalism means is very simple. It basically means that every person should be relaxed and comfortable in their own skin, whatever the colour may be, and that everyone has a place in our society, regardless of their background or where they're born. Not every country takes this approach to citizenship and membership. There are some places where you need to claim ancestry, where you need to have a certain lineage before you can become a formal citizen. We've done things differently here in Australia. Citizenship has been open to anyone who is a permanent resident here, regardless of their skin colour or their country of origin. And we should take every measure to ensure that the value of citizenship is something that we preserve and something that we reinforce at every opportunity. I think of every Australia Day, for example, where thousands of new Australians take the pledge to become Australian citizens. There you see in very direct form the meaning of citizenship for those who've travelled here, picked up their family and their life to start a new one. The journey of citizenship is certainly central to my own personal family history. We came here as a family when I was 3 years old from France, but we quickly took out citizenship, and I still remember being with my family as a young boy, celebrating our citizenship and being told by my parents that I was now officially an Australian. So don't underestimate ever the value of what citizenship involves for those who come here seeking a new life. One of the contradictions of our society, despite its multiculturalism, is that racism persists in all sorts of forms. It persists in systemic form, and we see this most starkly in the treatment of Indigenous Australians. If you look, for example, at the rate at which young Indigenous people are incarcerated or put into jail, we find the figure being in the range of 24 times that of those for non-Indigenous people. And that reflects systemic forms of discrimination and disadvantage. We know as well that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people don't enjoy the same level of educational attainment or life expectancy or rates of employment as other people in our society. That's a reflection of systemic discrimination. But there are more insidious or casual forms of discrimination too. You don't need to have racial segregation or official policies on race for there to be prejudice and bigotry getting in the way of people enjoying equal opportunity. Research that's been done will show you that if you have a Middle Eastern sounding name or a Chinese sounding name, you're less likely to be invited back to an interview than if you have an Anglo-Saxon sounding name. And we know too that casual racism exists in many varieties and in many places. The three most common places where people experience racial or religious discrimination is in fact the neighbourhood, in shopping centres, and in the workplace. Places where people go about their everyday business and ideally should be left alone to go about their own business. So what can we do to combat racism? There's always something you can do. You think perhaps of those archetypal situations where you're dramatically confronted with racial insult or abuse on public transport. And we've seen, particularly in recent times, that more and more people are standing up to that abuse. If it's safe to do so, you can step in and say something. You can report something to police or to a relevant authority. You can also film something with your mobile phone so that others can bear witness to racism. And perhaps most importantly, you can also offer comfort and support to a target of racism or abuse, because it's important that we all send a clear signal that the kind of conduct involved in racial attacks is not condoned or accepted by the rest of society. These are some of the messages that we promote through our national anti-racism strategy that we run at the Australian Human Rights Commission. Part of that strategy involves the Racism It Stops With Me campaign. This is a public awareness campaign that's been running for 3 years, and we've invited Australians of all walks of life to join our campaign and take a pledge in standing up to racism. There have been many schools, many universities, many corporations and local government areas that have joined, and I'd like to invite all of you at Dirrum Dirrum to consider whether you can play a part in this campaign too. Our message in combating racism is one about changing attitudes. It's about getting people to think of the experience of others, to reflect, in some cases, on their power and their privilege, to feel empathy with others. But this job can't be done unless we have change through the generations. And it's particularly important that young Australians take up this challenge and think about the responsibilities they have in fighting racism wherever and whenever it happens. On that note, I wish you well at Dirrum Dirrum. It's great to be able to join you through video form, but perhaps I'll have a chance to see some of you in person, and I wish you the very best.